always thought that if I kept my distance, everything would be safe. But that look, that night, it touched a part of me that had been buried for years. I didn't touch him, but the silence between us, it broke all boundaries. This was a confession I never dared to say out loud. Don't forget to like the video, share your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to stay updated on our latest stories. I used to believe boundaries were enough. That as long as I never touched him, never said the words out loud, never crossed that invisible line, then I was still good, still safe, still me. But that night, his eyes on me, everything shifted. It didn't happen in a rush. There were no loud confessions, no accidental brushes of skin, just silence, heavy, breathing silence. And the moment I saw him watching, not with judgment, not even lust, but something softer, deeper, I froze. It wasn't the look of a child. It wasn't curiosity. It was awareness, presence, and for a second, I didn't look away. I wish I had. Because since then, something's been unraveling inside me, quietly, slowly, like thread slipping through my fingers before I even realized I'd been holding it. Maybe I should start from the beginning, explain how we ended up in that room together. That night, in a hotel neither of us chose. Maybe I should tell you about the tournament, about how his father couldn't come, how I stepped in, how innocent it all seemed. But the truth is, none of that matters now. Not really. What matters is what happened in that silence, or maybe what didn't happen. Because the things we don't do, the words we don't say, the lines we almost cross, those are the ones that echo longest. This is not a love story. And it's not a scandal either. It's a confession. And it starts with a look I'll never forget, and a part of myself I'm not sure I can forgive. I'm Marissa, 39, second wife, the kind that blends into the background at family dinners, who's always polite, always helpful, but somehow never quite belongs. I married Richard 5 years ago. He's a decent man, steady, responsible, not unkind, but distant in ways he doesn't even realize. We don't fight, we don't make up, either. We just coexist, like polite strangers sharing the same house. Tyler is his son, 21, smart, quiet, a little hard to read. He lives part-time with us during school breaks. We've always been cordial, not close. But never awkward either, at least, not until recently. When Richard told me he couldn't make it to Tyler's bowling tournament, I offered to go in his place. It wasn't a big deal, just a regional qualifier a few hours out of town. One night in a resort hotel, a few games, a trophy ceremony, seemed simple enough. I didn't expect to feel nervous. I packed light. I wore neutral tones. I told myself I was just supporting him, just being a good stepmother. Nothing more. But there was something in the way Tyler looked at me that weekend. Not wrong, not obvious, just longer, softer, noticing things I didn't think anyone noticed anymore. I checked in under both our names. 2 beds, 1 room. The hotel was overbooked. They said it was the best they could do. I laughed it off. He didn't say much. We both shrugged, and that was that. It was supposed to be a favor, a short trip, a way to show up for someone who didn't expect it. But there was a part of me, buried and quiet, that wondered what would happen when the house wasn't watching and the walls between us thinned. There's a kind of silence that doesn't come from peace. It's the silence you build when nothing's really wrong, but nothing's right either. No shouting, no slammed doors, just routine, predictable, polite, empty. That's what my marriage became. Richard works hard. He always has. I respect that. But somewhere along the way, he stopped seeing me, not in a cruel way, more like I became part of the furniture. Useful, familiar, background. We talk about bills, groceries, his work, my schedule, but never about us. We don't touch much anymore. Not in passing, not in bed. Even our hugs feel like habits. I used to try. I'd ask him to join me for dinner instead of eating in front of the TV. I'd suggest weekend trips, small things to break the monotony. He always had a reason not to. Eventually, I stopped asking. I filled the quiet with work. Cleaning, emails, podcasts playing in the background just to feel less alone in my own house. I told myself this was normal. That passion fades. That this is what long-term love looks like. But late at night, when the lights are off and I can't sleep, I wonder. Not about leaving, I don't want that. I just wonder when I stopped feeling wanted. And when someone, anyone, finally notices you again, even if they shouldn't, it's hard to let that go. Especially when it's been so long since anyone really looked. It started with something small. We were standing in the elevator, heading up to our room after dinner at the hotel's buffet. Nothing special, bland pasta, overcooked chicken, 2 sweet desserts. Tyler had teased me for trying to eat healthy, picking at my steamed vegetables while he stacked his plate with everything fried. It was light, casual, even funny, but then the elevator doors closed, and we were alone. I caught him looking. Not a glance, not a passing flicker. It was steady, almost hesitant, like he was trying to decide whether to keep his eyes on me or look away. He didn't look away. Neither did I. I don't know how long it lasted. 2 seconds? 5? Long enough for me to feel it, the shift. That tiny change in air. Like static, like something unspoken had passed between us. When we got to the room, I laughed it off. "You're quiet tonight," I said. He just shrugged, sat on the edge of the bed, scrolling on his phone. I told myself I imagined it, that it was the wine, that I was just projecting, reading into things because I'd been feeling invisible for so long. But later, when I stepped out of the bathroom in my pajamas, oversized tee, no makeup, hair damp, he looked again. Quick, down, then back up, a half-second pause too long. And something in me responded, not with action, just awareness, heat in my chest, an ache I didn't know I still had. It scared me more than I'll admit. Because once someone sees you like that, it's hard to unfeel it. Harder still, to pretend it didn't matter. The room was dim. One soft lamp by the nightstand, casting a warm pool of light between the 2 beds. Tyler lay facing the wall, his back to me, earbuds in. I assumed he was watching something on his phone. I tried to read. I couldn't focus. My skin felt warm, restless. I shifted under the covers, adjusting the pillow. Then again, nothing helped. I wasn't cold. I wasn't hot. I was just aware of the silence, of the stillness, of him. I told myself to sleep, that this was just exhaustion, that I was making something out of nothing. But then he rolled over. I glanced without thinking. His face was half lit, relaxed, but his eyes were open, watching me, not startled, not embarrassed, just steady. Our eyes met. And everything in me tensed. He didn't smile, didn't look away, and neither did I. I don't know what my face was saying. I was too busy trying to calm the thudding in my chest. My breathing changed, shallow, quick. He shifted slightly, closer to the edge of his bed. Only a few inches, but I felt it. The space between us seemed to shrink, even though neither of us moved again. I turned over eventually, back facing him, pretending to settle. But I didn't sleep. I lay there, feeling my pulse in my neck, my ears. Every sound felt loud, every inhale, every exhale. And the worst part? I didn't feel afraid, I felt alive. And that scared me most of all. The next morning, I couldn't look at him the same way. He was polite, calm, unbothered. He asked if I slept okay. I lied, said I did, smiled like nothing inside me was unraveling. We went to the tournament. I cheered, I clapped, I even joked with the other parents in the stands, pretending everything was normal. But inside, I was spinning. I kept replaying that moment, the eye contact, the heat under my skin, the way my breath caught without permission. It had been nothing, really, a look, a pause, silence. And yet, it felt louder than anything anyone said all day. Was I imagining it? Maybe he'd just been tired. Maybe I was projecting. Or maybe, and this was the part that made my stomach turn, maybe he had looked at me that way. And I hadn't stopped him. Worse, I hadn't wanted to. I kept stealing glances at him, watching for signs, anything that would prove this wasn't just in my head. But he was calm, kind, casual, the same boy who once asked me to help him pick a tie for prom. The same one who helped me carry groceries in without being asked. So why was I now noticing the way his voice had deepened, the way his shoulders filled out his shirt? What was wrong with me? I wasn't some desperate woman looking for attention. I wasn't unhappy with my life, or so I'd believed. But now, every time Tyler stood close to me, every time his arm brushed mine, every time he smiled at me like I mattered, something in me ached. Not for him, exactly, for being seen. For being wanted again. And no matter how many times I told myself it would pass, it didn't. It got worse. It was the night after the finals. Tyler didn't win, but he placed high, top 3. He was proud, even if he didn't show it much. We had dinner in the lounge, just the two of us. His teammates had gone out, and I didn't ask why he stayed behind. Part of me was glad he did. We talked more than usual. About school, about how weird everything felt after 20. About the tournament. He asked about me too, my job. What I wanted to do if I ever stopped working nights. No one ever asked me that. We walked back to the room in quiet. His shoulder brushed mine a few times, but neither of us stepped away. Inside, the mood changed, softer, dimmer. I sat on the edge of my bed, pulling my hair into a loose bun, already in my sleep shirt. He moved around behind me, gathering his things, then paused. I felt him before I saw him, that stillness in the air again. When I turned, he was standing close, too close. His face was unreadable, calm, but his eyes, they were asking something. My throat went dry. "Do you want me to switch the lamp off?" he asked. I nodded, too fast. He reached over me, not touching, but close enough that I could feel his warmth, the soft scent of his cologne. I didn't move. His hand hovered a moment too long before flicking the switch. Darkness. Only the faint glow from outside bled into the room. I could feel him still standing there. I could feel my heart pounding so loud it almost echoed. Then he stepped back. No words, no touch, just a line drawn, in silence. We both crossed nothing. And yet, it felt like everything had changed. The morning after was quiet. Too quiet. Tyler was already dressed when I woke up, sitting by the window, earbuds in, staring out. He nodded when I said good morning, but he didn't smile, not like before. We packed, checked out, drove home in the same car, with the same playlist, but it all felt off, like something had been said, without words, and now we didn't know how to unsay it. When we pulled into the driveway, Richard's car wasn't there. He was still out of town. That should have been a relief. But something else wasn't right. My son, Ethan, from my first marriage, had come home early from college. I hadn't expected him. He didn't call ahead. He was just there, sitting on the porch, hoodie on, phone in hand. "Surprise," he said, flat, expressionless. I hugged him. He didn't hug back the same way he used to. Not cold, exactly, just distant, like he was watching something I couldn't see. Tyler said hi. Ethan nodded. That was it. That night, as I unpacked, I noticed the home security app on Richard's tablet blinking. He'd installed a new indoor cam, just outside the guest room and hallway. Motion triggered. I didn't even know it had been active. I opened the footage out of curiosity. There was nothing, and then something. A clip timestamped from 2 nights ago. It showed me and Tyler entering our hotel room, labeled Tyler's feed, synced from his phone. I froze. I didn't know he'd connected anything. I didn't know it could auto-sync. I didn't even know it would back up here, to this house. This app. There wasn't anything inappropriate on screen. Just us. Walking in. But it lingered. The way he looked at me. The way I paused in the doorway. The way the door closed behind us. If Ethan saw that, or worse, if Richard did. No one said anything. But I started noticing the looks. The quiet pauses. The shift in the air when I entered a room. It was like someone had seen something. Even if they didn't say a word, I could feel it. And that silence? It was louder than a scream. Nothing was said, not by Tyler, not by Ethan, not even by Richard when he returned 2 days later. But everything felt different. Ethan barely spoke to me. No more late-night chats in the kitchen. No casual hugs, just quiet glances, and short answers, and the sense that something unspoken now sat between us, wide and cold. I kept telling myself I was imagining it, that he was just tired, distracted, college stress, maybe. But I knew. I knew the moment I heard him pause outside my door one night. Just long enough to remind me, he didn't trust me anymore. Richard was even harder to read. He's always been emotionally distant. But this time, he was almost too normal. Too polite. Too predictable. Like he was avoiding a confrontation I hadn't even realized was coming. I watched him closely. The way he scrolled his phone when I spoke. The way he kissed my cheek but never really looked at me. He hadn't seen the video, or maybe he had. Maybe he'd watched it a dozen times and decided to pretend he hadn't. Maybe that was worse. Tyler didn't reach out. Not a text. Not a thank you for the trip. Nothing. We didn't speak again after we got home. He went back to school. I watched the taillights of his car disappear down the street and felt emptier than I should have. I wasn't grieving a relationship, there was no relationship. Nothing happened. That was the line I clung to. But emotionally, something had happened, and it changed the air in my house. In my family. In me. I started double-checking what I wore around the house. Kept my hair tied up. Avoided mirrors. Not because of shame. But because the reflection no longer felt like mine. I had broken nothing, touched nothing, crossed no line. And yet, I had lost something anyway. Something I still can't name. I've replayed it 100 times, that moment in the dark. The way he looked at me. The breath I held too long. The words I never said. We didn't cross a line. But we stood on the edge of it. And maybe that's worse. Because when something actually happens, when a boundary is broken, there's a clear villain. A consequence. An ending. But when it almost happens, it lingers. It lives in the corners of your mind. It haunts the way silence feels too heavy in a shared room. No one ever confronted me. Not Ethan, not Richard, not Tyler. But I feel judged anyway. Maybe not by them, but by myself. By the version of me that thought she'd never let it get that far. The woman who prided herself on control, on clarity, on staying inside the lines. She's gone now. In her place is someone a little quieter, a little more careful, a woman who turns the other way when she catches someone looking too long. But late at night, sometimes I wonder. Not what if, not what could have been. But why? Why did I freeze instead of step back? Why didn't I speak? Why did being seen feel like something I didn't want to lose? This isn't a story about desire. It's a story about loneliness. About silence that grows so loud it starts to feel like a voice. And I'm not here to ask for forgiveness. I just needed someone to hear me say it. Because maybe, just maybe, if I say it out loud, I'll finally stop whispering it to myself.